Friends, here we are once again. And for the time being, I show up every 2 weeks, if you haven't noticed. For those that have been here for, quite some time through this journey, maybe some of you remember I used to funnel $500 every single week into this portfolio. And that was a very quick pace. And, when I was doing that, I would show up every single week because, there was just more action. But otherwise, friends, I just show up every 2 weeks for now. And one thing I don't push out often enough is, maybe some of you are like, man, what is Jesse up to during these 2 weeks? Well, I always say life happens, right? Well, if you want to continue to follow my journey, I don't say it often enough, but I have a secondary channel, which sometimes it appears to be my primary. I upload multiple times a week on there, and I try to give value in different ways, more on my personal development journey. I used to upload some of those videos on this channel. If you have been an OG for a while, you know that. But if there's something of value there that you can get, go and check it out. Subscribe. But otherwise, friends, in this week's video, we've been a dividend investor for 3 years now. Isn't that crazy? That is where we're at. I know some people watching this have been a seasoned dividend investor for a longer period of time. Or maybe some of you have been here even less than I have. But regardless of your journey, friends, you know what it feels like. And you know that this journey is a long one. And oftentimes it does feel rather alone to be on this journey. It's a long process, it takes time, and there's not a lot of people doing it. And if you tend to be a little bit on the younger side, it's even more of a lonely path. For some reason, a lot of younger investors like to go into those exciting stocks, and I don't blame them. Back when I was in college, I was learning things myself. I would invest more into crypto. I would invest more in penny stocks. And, I've scraped my knees in some of those processes and some of those learning experiences. But I wouldn't be a dividend investor today if I didn't go through any of those experiences. But needless to say, friends, time passes. And I always want this journey to give you an example that now that we're 3 years in, we continue, and that's all we do. We just continue and we continue and we continue to chip away. Because the end goal of this life, friends, is to continue to be satisfied. And one way is to be financially satisfied. You don't want to get to the end of your life, through working in this workforce and going to retire and having nothing to show for it. And usually that's the outcome. If you don't financially prepare and you don't choose a strategy financially and plan ahead. But as dividend investors, that's all we do, right? All we do is look at the horizon because we know this strategy takes so long. But in looking at the horizon, friends, sometimes it's hard to take a moment and look back at how far it is that we've come or all the progress that we've made. But just know, in this journey, in this storyline, on this channel, friends, I will continue to document that time passes, and just as much as we need to look ahead into that horizon, into that future that we so desire, into that financial satisfaction one day, we also got to take that moment and appreciate today. And when we do that, and when we look at the present moment, it is really only then that you get to see how far it is that we've come. And it may be 3 years for you, friends. It may be more. It may be less. But take this video as a moment to just recognize how far it is that you've come since you've started. And if you haven't started yet, take this moment to recognize that maybe you should. But here I am, friends, 3 years in as a dividend investor. And in this video specifically, I want to discuss the top 3 things I continue to realize. And I'm going to share those 3 things with you. They're going to be a little bit different, hopefully, than what you've heard before. But a lot of that is the point of this channel, is just to give you a different perspective. A lot of what I focus on this channel are the things that I can't and maybe can control a little bit. And that is time and how I leverage it and how I use it and how I continue to feel throughout this period of time. I don't go deep into data. I don't go deep into the statistics. I go more into the feeling, into the actuality of formulating the plan that it will take to reach that end goal. Because we know time continues to tick We leverage time as a dividend investor to create the best dividend portfolio we can. But it's a very base hit approach. And I know you know that. But sometimes for me, I also even need reminders that when I see people swing for the fences and every once in a while hit that home run, I second guess myself. And it's easy to do that. But just remind yourself, as a dividend investor, we take base hits here. We do one step at a time. But over time it adds up, friends. And we run the scoreboard. And we do it in a way that finances is just something that we got going on in the background. It doesn't take away our focal point from living this life. So let's move on, friends. Let's continue here. These are the top 3 things that I continue to realize now that I'm a 3-year dividend investor. And in its stage, just saying that, I'm not too far into the journey. It still feels like I just started the other day. But as you'll see, we've crossed the $70,000 mark. I've been through some of this, ups and downs. I've scraped my knees a little bit. I've learned some things already along the way. But still, I'm a baby dividend investor in the grand scheme of things, aren't I? And you may be the same. I would say, maybe once you've been doing it for 5 years, that's a good point. 10 years is a decade. And every other decade after that, you become more and more of a seasoned dividend investor. And we just continue to learn, friends. It's a process. So for the first thing that I wanted to touch on, the one thing that I do continue to realize is you must have a plan and you must have a vision. You have to have this when you are a dividend investor, because it's so easy, like I mentioned earlier, to watch other people win sooner than yourself. And maybe there's some luck involved. Maybe it's timing. But at the end of the day, friends, you got to recognize that you're on a different path. You got to understand that you have a plan and you have a vision, and it's different. You have to have this, though, as a continual reminder in your day-to-day life, maybe on a weekly basis as you have been doing this for a while, maybe as a monthly reminder if you've been doing it for even longer than that. Sometimes you just every once in a while remind yourself, oh yeah, I'm a dividend investor and, I have a plan. I'm not worried. These things just take time. I just got to trust my process. But you have to have this plan and this vision, because it's so easy to deviate. It's so easy to want to change paths and change courses and go up to a fork in the road and, decide to go a different path than you originally envisioned. But you can't do that, friends. You have to create this plan at the start, because through that, you already have this vision. You want a passive stream of income. You got to remind yourself of that. That is why you're a dividend investor. Why are we dividend investors, you say? Well, 1, we do want that passive stream of income. 2, we want to do it in a way where we leverage time. We want it to happen slowly, like, making some cold brew, dripping that coffee, having it happen over time. We're not in a rush. We want to continue to live life and enjoy life, but not focus so much on the stress of trying to find that next growth stock, the stress of losing your money overnight. A dividend portfolio is a very solid, slow, dripping process. And if you activate the drip, like I'm alluding to, you reinvest these funds over and over again. And a lot of it, friends, over time, it does add up. It's not even your own money. It gets bigger and bigger. And at the end of it all, friends, your vision was, I have this dividend portfolio that now pays me passive income. I don't have to take away from the portfolio itself. I get to keep it. You get to keep your cake and eat it too. And that's the point. If one day you ever have to sell a chunk of your dividend portfolio, fine, we'll do that. But otherwise, we'll enjoy the size of it and take the funds that it provides. But always remember, friends, you got to remind yourself, you must have a plan and you must have a vision. And you have to have it from the start, in the middle part, all the way to the end. And I know it's hard, but you have to do that. It's one thing that I continue to realize over time is I have a plan. I had a vision. I created this from the start. I just got to continue to see it through. I can't stop here. So for you friends, don't stop here. And for the second thing that I continue to realize as a dividend investor is you got to make the process unnoticeable. And this goes hand in hand with the fact or idea that a dividend portfolio takes time. My channel, after all, is called Continues to Tick, and that is in a reference to time. That is for me a reminder that I want to build my financial wealth over time. I'm okay if I'm not instantly gratified, right, in the moment. I'm okay if this is a slow dripping process. And in that, you got to recognize that, hey, it is a slow process. So the least you can notice it along the way, the better. I know one bad habit I had, when I was first starting out my dividend portfolio, is I would look at my portfolio like way too often. And yes, it would change here and there, but when I was doing that, I was still in the same mindset of a growth investor. And you got to recognize that there's a difference. A growth investor does continually and constantly have to look at their holdings. Ultimately, they got to see how it's trending. As a dividend investor, though, you got blue chip company stocks for a reason. You got dividend aristocrats. You got dividend kings. You have companies that are so solid, they're better than you are. Probably been longer. They've been alive longer on this earth than you have. And they've been steady and they've been paying dividends, and you can trust them. And you can look at their balance sheet and see that they're steady as they come. They're not shaky. They're not rocky. There's a reason you chose this strategy. And in choosing this strategy, you did it because you knew it would drip slowly. The wealth would be created over time. And through this, you got to be reassured that you don't have to look at your portfolio as often as you did before as a penny stock investor, a crypto investor, as a growth investor. The more you can make your process as a dividend investor unnoticeable, the better it'll be for the long term. To be honest, friends, I very rarely look at my portfolio nowadays. I got my funnel set, right? I fund $100 every Friday. It happens automatically on M1 Finance. And I do these videos every 2 weeks. I really only check my portfolio, if at all, once a week. I definitely check it every 2 weeks when I go to make these videos here. But other than that, friends, what I look at is maybe the Dow Jones, just to kind of get a peek at how the overall market is doing. I definitely don't look at my portfolio as much as I did when I first started. Because looking at your portfolio too much is going to make you or tempt you to want to make changes. You got to recognize that a dividend portfolio and the creation of wealth through this process, it happens over time. It does not happen overnight. So the least you can go about making changes to your portfolio and looking at your portfolio, the better it'll be for you as you go year after year running your dividend portfolio and continuing to increase the time that you've been a dividend investor. So just keep that in mind. And as for the third thing, friends, that I continue to realize now that I'm 3 years in to this dividend journey is you will have to make adjustments. So as much as I said, make this portfolio unnoticeable, I do want to just, dovetail off that a little bit, that you will have to make adjustments. And with this, I don't mean, hey, you got to buy and sell all the time. I don't even mean to sell any portion of your dividend portfolio. For me, my adjustments were my funding schedule. Like I've said earlier in the video, I used to fund $500 every single week, and now I only fund $100 every week. And what was the cause of that? That is what I mean by making adjustments. Well, life happens, friends. We all know that. You've probably had so many moments in your own personal life that have made you make adjustments already, whether it's in your financial portfolio, whether it's in your time trajectory, whether it's in time or life milestones. I'm 27 years old. There's a lot of change that happens during this time. People enter the workforce, they're already a couple years in, they get a raise, they find a life partner, they get married, they have kids, they buy a house, they buy a car, they start to go on vacations, parents get sick, siblings get sick, you get sick. Things happen Accidents happen. So many things in this life happen. And one thing I'm realizing the older that I get is right when you think you're good and life is boring, that is actually the best part. And if you can find little pockets of that throughout your lifetime, those are the moments, for some reason, we can't find a way to appreciate them enough. But those pockets of boredom, those are the best ones. When your life is uneventful, those are actually the best moments that if you could pick and choose over and over again, you would. What I mean by that little rant, friends, is that life happens. And as it does, you will continue to have to make adjustments. So don't, through that process of having to make all these adjustments, lose course or lose sight of the horizon that you have on the back end of being a dividend investor. This process is easy. This process is boring for a reason. It takes time. So as all these life changes happen, remind yourself that you're a dividend investor on the very, very base floor of your foundation. But if you have to make adjustments, don't be scared to make them. If you have to go from funding a certain amount to a slightly less amount, that's an adjustment, and that is fine. The point is you don't want to ever stop. Just make an adjustment. If you get married and now your funding schedule has to change, don't stop. Make an adjustment. Let's say you start to have kids and there's a different sense of priorities now. Make an adjustment. Don't stop. If people have a sickness in your life that are in your inner circle, make an adjustment. Don't stop. Because the second you stop, friends, you stop. As long as you continue to keep going, it doesn't matter the pace. Because sometimes just throwing a pebble in to this pile of rocks is enough. Because over time, friends, it's not necessarily the speed that you go in. It's the fact that you've been regularly able to throw little pebbles into this pile here. And one day when you're able to throw in more, it's not going to feel foreign because you've been throwing them into that pile over and over and over again. But the second you stop, you may forget how, or you may forget the purpose of even throwing a pebble into that pile. You got to continue to funnel, friends. You got to continue this dividend portfolio forward and see it through. So be prepared to make adjustments because life is coming. It continues to come. And even at 27 years old, I've been through a couple of these situations already. Through some of these changes, I filed domestic partnership with my life partner. It used to be my girlfriend, and now we decided to become domestic partners. It helps with insurance and things like that. When we first rented, we rented an apartment, then we rented a house, and now we rent a slightly bigger house. But through that time, friends, I made adjustments. And I foresee other adjustments coming along the way. We like going on trips now, so we got to adjust the budget a little bit. We got to adjust our lifestyle sometimes. And I foresee my parents getting old. And I foresee me having to be a little bit more around. And who knows what exactly that actually means for my actual, finances and budget. But life is going to happen, friends. Make adjustments. Make adjustments. I cannot stress that enough. So these are 3 things that I think overall are important, just as daily reminders whenever you watch this video, monthly reminders to yourself. We're year 3 in. When year 4 comes around, I'll do another video and share a little bit more of what I continue to learn, but this is a fun process, friends. Don't take it too seriously at the same time. Just know that on the foundation of ourselves, we can continue to be a dividend investor and not have it be really much part of our identity. And as we continue this video forward, friends, it wasn't too long ago when we hit the $70,000 mark. And I'm going to show you here, but I think a lot of it is actually from a couple holdings. But regardless, we're at $71,237, friends, with an all-time return of 27.52%, which is a total gain of $9,888. And the beauty, friends, the beauty, if you're a dividend investor, is looking at this thing right here. The earned dividends with the market gain. If I was just a growth investor, maybe this would be more, or it might even be red, who knows? But the fact is, $6,000 is from market gain. and $3,600 is from all-time earned dividends. That matters. That is the part as to why we need to be dividend investors, because sometimes the markets will do what they do, but regardless, we're getting that passive stream of income. And if you're curious, friends, I've been dripping it. And because this is a 3-year mark video, friends, I want to show you guys. I started this portfolio on July 20th of the year 2020, and it says a value of $648, but I started at zero, just like everybody else. And over time, friends, I've continually funneled. In the past at a quicker rate, but still we remain consistent. And here we are now, past the 3-year mark of being a dividend investor. And isn't that awesome to see? I just always want this to be one example of a journey, because I know we're all on our own personal one, but I just want to show anybody at whatever stage you're in that this is a worthwhile strategy. It pays dividends, no pun intended, to leverage your time and utilize it wisely and stick with the strategy. There's purpose here behind it. Don't you forget. And just to side note here a little bit, I know sometimes people want to take a look at my portfolio, and if that's the case for you, friends, you're curious, there's no problem there. I always have a link in the description box down below. You can click on that and it'll take you to my personal pie. And just like it shows you slices here, you'd be able to click on tech, for example, and see what I'm holding in there. And I'll show you here. This is NVIDIA. This is one of the main reasons why I think my portfolio has gone up, because NVIDIA continues to go up. NVIDIA is one of the big AI plays right now. And, sure, I kind of had that in the back of my mind when I got it, but, Oracle's also doing really well too at 129%. And this was a stock people called a fossil and was dead in the water. So sometimes my point is, you don't know exactly how things are going to play out. You just got to trust in the holdings that you have when you first start, or as you go over time to choosing new stock holdings to add to your portfolio. Sometimes the ones that you least expect to really give you much are the ones that give you more. So just keep that in mind as you move along. Just continue to trust yourself, do your research along the way, formulate and create the portfolio that works for you. That's all I did for myself. And now let's go into the activity section here. Let's see if it takes me too long to go back to my very first dividend payout. In honor of now reaching the 3-year mark of dividends. So a couple clicks in, friends. Here it is. My first dividend payout is 8 pennies. One from Procter & Gamble, another one from Apple. But just for perspective, my first dividend payout was 8 pennies. And now if we go to the very start of my portfolio. So here, for example, the stock payouts that I get now: Medtronic of $12, O for $8, Essex for $16, Philip Morris $9, American Tower Corp $11. So a lot more than 8 pennies. And just to show you a little bit of the data, just a little bit, I do hold 51 holdings. For some of those that like to know the statistics, my current dividend yield is 3.134%, and my expense ratio is 0.01%. But otherwise, we're 3 years in, friends, and we show up every 2 weeks. Keep that in mind. And like I mentioned earlier in the video, if you made it to this point in the video and you're like, man, what is Jesse up to? Go check out my other channel, Continues to Improve. Maybe there's something of value there for you, and you can see me there a lot more often than on this channel. This channel is specific to a dividend journey, financial journey. It is specific to this, and everything else is separate, and you'll find that on my second channel. And otherwise, friends, I wish you the best of luck and the resilience that it takes to be a dividend investor sometimes. It's a slow, steady, dripping, boring process, but you could do it, friends. See it through, stick with it. It will be worth it one day, and I hope to continue to show that over time. And until the next video, friends, take care, but I will see you then.